Would I be the asshole for calling CPS on my sister because I disagree with how she's raising her daughter? Making a long story short here, the day after Christmas, my 16-year-old niece, Emma, called me sobbing, begging to come live with me. She said her house was a prison and her parents wouldn't let her be happy anymore. We talked for a while and what she told me was confirmed as true by my sister when I talked to her. Emma has always had lopsided grades, with A's in English and history but C's and D's in math and science. This time last year, she was diagnosed with ADHD, which I knew because I was diagnosed a few years ago and my sister called me to ask my opinion on how well non-medication treatments worked, since her husband was adamantly opposed to letting Emma take what her doctor prescribed for fear of her becoming addicted. Medication and intuitive living has always worked best for me, but when I was pregnant with my kids and couldn't take meds, I got by with the recommended ADHD diet and exercise regime and a good routine. It turns out my brother-in-law has taken that into hyperdrive and gone full prison guard on Emma's life in order to get her grades up. She has a strict routine that only includes school, studying, exercise, and family mealtimes. She is not allowed any contact with friends outside of school, and eats a special diet that doesn't include dairy, caffeine, or sweets of any kind. Everything distracting has been taken out of her room, including all of her books and beloved paintings by my late mother. Her science and math grades have come up to B's, which my brother-in-law insists means the routine is working but still can't be eased up on yet, since she hasn't come to her full potential. The incident that triggered her phone call, she stole her brother's phone while he was sleeping because she's not allowed a phone or unsupervised computer time, was her being banned from celebrating Christmas with the family, since it would be a deviation from her routine. I feel like this has fallen into awful territory and has only gone on so long due to the current craziness. I got my sister on the phone, and she broke down crying, saying that she's begged her husband to ease up but that openly instituting a lighter set of rules or telling Emma to ignore him will absolutely lead to a divorce. She says she's weighed the options and since her husband would definitely get 50-50 custody of the kids, spurring a divorce to get Emma out of BIL's rules one half the time for the next 2.5 years of high school isn't worth the kids being in a broken home and losing her kids one half the time, especially with the other two still just 13 and 10. She said she'd work on him, but according to my nephew, my brother-in-law has been even harder on Emma since he found out we talked. I think CPS and the school need to be aware of this, but my dad says, it's not against the law to be strict, and my husband says I would be wasting resources calling them since it's not serious enough for the courts to get involved. I just don't know what else to do. I feel like CPS could at least get Emma real treatment.
Not the asshole, but don't be surprised if CPS doesn't do much. Yeah, this is hyper strict, but I don't know if you can call it abusive. I think you can expect that your niece will flee the house the first moment she gets when she turns 18.
Why would her husband definitely get 50-50 custody? Surely most judges would take the preferences of a 16-year-old teen into account, especially if she was very emphatic that she was miserable with her dad and his awful treatment of her was literally the entire reason for the divorce. I don't think you'd be an asshole for calling CPS, so not the asshole. I just doubt it would result in anything changing. Worst case, the family eliminates contact with you.
Not the asshole. This does feel abusive to me, but I'm unsure CPS can or will do anything. Can Emma talk to a therapist or a guidance counselor? It may take third-party non-family intervention by a specialist for your brother-in-law to see what he's doing here is actually harmful.
Not the asshole for thinking that urgent intervention is needed. But yeah, unfortunately, I suspect CPS isn't going to be able to do anything, especially if your sister and the rest of the family are prepared to cover for her husband. Your focus likely needs to be on what you can do to make sure Emma can maintain contact with the outside world and that she knows she has somewhere to go if need be.
Not the asshole, but I doubt they'll do anything. Being she's over 13, she should have the say on whether or not to go with her father in case of divorce, though. Also, 50% freedom is better than none, and the mom and dad are going in the right direction for a no-contact adult daughter. If the mom doesn't put her foot down, and now, this is her future. She needs to make the choice.
Not the asshole. Your brother-in-law doesn't understand anything at all about ADHD. This dude is transparently abusive. What he's subjecting your niece to is barely a life. Edit. Removed all references to addiction. Sorry for unintentionally spreading disinformation.
Isn't worth the kids being in a broken home. Sounds like that home is already cracked at least. Your sister needs to sort that shit out with her husband.
Not the asshole. What a great way to ruin your child's high school experience. Ideally, you and other family members should try to talk some sense into brother-in-law or at least convince M to consult with her doctor and family therapist. But, according to your sister, that might not be possible, and completely isolating a 16-year-old from the world is not being strict, it's abusive. Yeah, I would start by talking to the school and take it from there. This kid needs help. Not the asshole, but explore all options before escalating. Info. Why do you think he would get 50-50 custody? Normally courts take into account the minor's wishes when they are that old.
Not the asshole. It's wasting resources if you feel your niece should get to eat sugary cereal and watch cartoons. It's not wasting resources if your niece is being controlled so much and deprived of social interactions. That is not a healthy environment for her, or for her siblings to witness, and think is acceptable behavior. If your family is religious, maybe ask for a session with brother-in-law and a priest. Otherwise, CPS is a good option if you aren't able to take your niece for the next 2.5 years. You could be all, I'm so strict because I'm ADHD, and I need help with my kids. Having niece would be great. But, I doubt that would be a viable option, if getting straight A's is the only goal here. Ugh, I'm so sorry.
Not the asshole. CPS may handle it or they may not. That said, it's not a bad idea to document it if the situation continues to escalate. And if they would have handled it, you will regret not turning it in. It will either get closed at intake or it won't. As your sister, why the other 2 children are more important than the oldest. 2 years is still 2 years of mental anguish and prison-like conditions. If she won't stand up to him, she is guaranteeing that she won't be a part of her daughter's life once she's able to get out. And there's a reason certain kids go wild in college. They get so starved for what they were denied they go overboard. They are setting her up for failure.
Call CPS. Use the words emotional and mental abuse. Say that she can't even talk to her grandparents and that she is locked in the house at all times. Tell them about the breakdown on the phone call. Air it out. Explain he is keeping medication from her. Explain that he is using the abuse to control his wife as well. Cause that is what's happening. If CPS does nothing, call for a wellness check. Make sure to let it be known she has a place in your home. Not the asshole, yet I doubt anything would come from it. It seems like your brother-in-law took your advice the last time. Maybe you could influence the situation again. Maybe even get him to let her take meds. Especially WGEN, you can convince him that you were able to easily lay off the meds once pregnant. Doesn't matter if it's true, as long as your brother-in-law believes it.
Not the asshole. Perhaps you need to point out to your abusive brother-in-law that people with ADHD are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than people without ADHD. His extremely controlling behavior, his isolation of his daughter, and the fact that she is so incredibly miserable are not going to help lower those statistics.
While I agree that this approach is very damaging and will probably alienate your niece from her parents, I don't think CPS will view it as abusive. You're not the asshole for wanting to advocate for her, but I don't think this is the way to do it.
WIBTA Bekasu CPS isn't going to care about what you described, but if your sister finds out, she'll cut you from your niece's life. The best bet here is to keep contact with your niece and try to get your sister to calm down. If she doesn't, open your home to her when she's 18.
Not the asshole. CPS won't do much, if anything, though. Brother-in-law is begging to become estranged from his daughter. What's his plan for when, if she goes off to college? The not celebrating with the family thing is just cruel. Brother-in-law is the
So instead of working out issues with her and helping her, since she technically has a learning disability, they decided to take everything away from her until she gets her grades up, put her on a diet, and a strict routine. Holy hell, not the asshole. What your sister's husband is doing is borderline, in my opinion, abuse. I feel for that girl. I feel for her. Her parents care about her grades more than her well-being.
Not the asshole. For wanting to support your niece. Is it possible to have a family intervention for Bill? If not, you could try CPS, though I'm not sure they'd help. Your BIL's behavior actually could help your sister get full custody if it came to that. Do you have the resources to support your niece if needed?
Not the asshole. Hello there. CPS intake here waves. You can make a report, however I can tell you that this will be evaluated out. They can connect the family to services for support, but no intervention will be made by a social worker. This form of parenting does not rise to the level of general neglect or emotional abuse. Unfortunately, bad parenting does not equate child abuse. It's subjective. However, if the mother is serious about divorce, CPS can recommend some family law services. Feel free to message me. Best of luck. Not the asshole. This sounds like extreme helicopter parenting, but I agree that CPS would probably do nothing about this situation. I think the most you can do is try to get her out of the house and stay with you whenever possible.
Not the asshole, but understand that CPS isn't going to do much about this.
Not the asshole, but as long as the house is clean and food is present, CPS will not do anything at all. Doesn't matter if they don't let her eat the food, literally as long as the house looks fine, they don't care.
Not the asshole. CPS actually updated their criteria for abuse, so this very well may qualify. Please try to help this girl because her mother failed to protect her, so now it falls on you as an adult in her life.
Not the asshole. It's entirely possible that CPS will basically say that this is fine, or that they can't do anything. That being said, this has gone beyond just being strict, and your brother-in-law needs a reality check, so I think that government officials asking him about this might be needed. That being said, you should probably be ready for what the judgment from CPS might be. This could be anything, from, everything is fine, to, the children will be placed in foster homes.
You are the asshole. Going against the grain here, but not for the reasons you might think. CPS is already overstretched. They have a lot of abuse to investigate, and if you call this in, you are just taking the attention away from those who need the protection. What your bill is doing here is not good, we can all agree. Is it abusive? Maybe, but what does it accomplish really to get CPS involved? Foster care isn't going to be better, it probably will be far, far worse. Not the asshole. Cutting all contact with the world is abuse. I think Emma would define benefit from a visit from CPS. Anyways, I would look for a way to have Emma moving in with you. Her parents are not allowing her access to the support she needs to succeed with ADHD.
Not the asshole. You should remind your sister that the second that child turns 18 they will lose their daughter, because they poor girl will never speak to either of them again. She is allowing her daughter to be treated like this, and she holds equal blame.
Sounds awful, but I don't see anything illegal, Sue. I don't think CPS will be able to do anything.
Not the asshole. Wow. Good grades in school are not worth ruining a child's happiness. I get she needs strategies for coping with the ADHD, but wow. Not the asshole. I doubt CPS will do anything, but is there a way for you to just take her? If her mother consents, could she go live with you temporarily?
Not the asshole, but I've been through CPS, I doubt they'll be able to do anything. Which is awful, but it's true.
CPS wouldn't do anything because this wouldn't peg as abuse on their radar. Talk to your sister about divorce and circumventing her asshole husband. How to circumvent her husband. 1. Get a prescription for meds for niece, pay out of pocket for generic if necessary. 2. Leave the prescription at school with the nurse. 3. Niece goes to nurse every morning for meds. 4. Be sure to give nurse mother's cell number for any notification. Rarely do I suggest deception in a marriage, but if you're married to a lunatic, that changes the rules.
I'm going against the grain of the comments and saying you are the asshole. Not for wanting to intervene, but if you call CPS you would be an R. Because that's not what CPS does. They can't intervene simply from disagree with parenting styles. CPS will not do anything to help, it will just stir up more trouble for everyone. You need to find another way to get through to the dad. Maybe an intervention type of situation. Come at him with compassion instead of confrontation. CPS is not the solution here.
Why WNBTA if you called them? It doesn't hurt to have someone, an outsider, take a look at the conditions and try to mediate. This is so sad. Not only is he keeping her from her prescribed medicine but he's isolating her. This is not healthy. If this was a boyfriend doing this, the immediate response would be to leave him. He may be her father but he does not own her. It's one thing to be strict but this is not strict, this is abusive. I feel so bad for your niece. I really do. Not the asshole you're trying to look out for her well-being. But CPS probably won't do anything. They won't consider anything they're doing as abuse.
Not the asshole, but your sister needs to realize that a 16-year-old would get to choose where they live, so if she divorced, your poor niece could choose not to see her father.
Not the asshole. I don't think they'll do anything, but it might help build a record and documentation of what he is doing. I think your sister needs to step up and set her own rules. Short of physically stopping her, she has as much say and control as he does. And if he does go to the extreme of physically stopping her, then she should move for divorce and fight for primary custody.
Info: Is Emma not your sister's biological child? You mentioned Emma's late mother in the post. If so, how long has your sister and Bill been married? Ask your sister why she is willing to let her husband totally isolate and mentally, emotionally, and verbally abuse her daughter. Ask her why she is willing to sacrifice her daughter's mental health on the altar of keeping her marriage intact. CPs may not do much, but I'd at least call the school. If you can, offer your niece a place to escape the second she turns 18. Ada, not the asshole.
Not the asshole. When brother-in-law said that she hasn't reached her full potential, he sounded just like a supervillain. And while he may not be super, he's a villain.
Not the asshole, but CPS won't do much. If he's so worried about her coming to her full potential, you should list out all the key things a father should be doing and give him grades on this and see how he stands up to a father's full potential, and send it to all the family and say he needs a stricter routine. Not the asshole. Do not be afraid to call CPS. What the brother-in-law is doing is legally defined abuse. As a former Leo 12 years, this is not strict parenting, it's domestic abuse. 50-50 parenting would be somewhat doubtful, but that entirely depends on the judge. Your niece will develop major resentments toward anyone who doesn't try to do something, especially you, as she called you looking to be saved. No child should be treated as a prisoner in their own home because they don't have perfect grades. Anytime a child is being abused, never ever question if you should do something about it. Anyone who tells you otherwise is complicit in the abuse.
Your sister is trying to save her marriage rather than save her kid from this. She's a fucking asshole. As is the husband, of course.
Not the asshole. My heart breaks reading this. JFC, that poor girl. Talk to your sister about sending Emma to your home for an extended visit this spring or summer. Get written permission from your sister to get Emma into therapy that her dad cannot eavesdrop on. It probably wouldn't hurt for your sister to get into counseling herself.
Not the asshole, but CPS won't help. TBA, even the school or anyone else receiving a call from you probably isn't going to result in much help. However, if the mother were to speak to the physician or counselor at school, it is then possible that someone might be able to help. Having a professional step in and explain to him that while his intentions might not be bad, going to the extreme in such a way is potentially as damaging as abuse can be. Unfortunately, it is very hard to show proof of why a strict patent isn't any better than an overly permissive one, especially when the methods appear to be working.
This is horrific. Not the asshole. This is past overt strictness. She's being socially isolated and stripped of important mental health resources. She was desperate enough to call you from a phone she had to risk a likely steep reprimand just to use. This is emotionally abusive. She absolutely is being traumatized by this, and I sincerely hope she can get help. The alternative for her to what? Crash and burn. Somehow pull out, as without the promise that anything will actually change. What happens the first time she gets a B or a C or fails after having habitually improved? Where does this end?
No. Do it. This isn't strictness, it's abuse. Think about it. If a romantic partner were doing this to Emma, isolating her from friends and family, depriving her of leisure, cutting off her means of communication, you'd be telling her to secure her documents and pack a go bag. I'd also describe cutting her off from needed medication as medical abuse, but I'm biased because my parents did something similar.